Here's what Caleb Campbell, pastor and author of Disarming Leviathan, had to say about my upcoming book, The Edge of the Inside, releasing March 31st. The Edge of the Inside is an honest, grace-filled exploration of what happens when the center no longer holds and following Jesus leads us into unfamiliar territory. It's part memoir, part prophetic call, and part survival guide for anyone who has loved the church enough to tell it the truth. If you'd like to read a copy before it comes out, we'd love to have you join our book launch team. You can find out more at edgeoftheinside.com or at the link in the show notes. Welcome to another episode of Cabernet and Pray, where we sip the wine and we stir the faith. And today, we've got a whole bunch of satire for you, a bunch of humor. So if you're ready to laugh at some serious stuff, then this is the episode for you. We've got Stuart Delony today. He is a former pastor who left the church, but still takes the teachings of Jesus seriously. He hosts Snarky Faith, critiquing American Christianity from the fringe, which is why he and I got along immediately. He is the author of the Tribulation Survival Guide, which is a deadpan satire of end times theology and fear-based faith. And he basically is teaching people how to laugh at bad theology and look more like Jesus. So I think this is a beautiful conversation. This is episode 68, where satire meets spirituality.
I've never shared this with anybody publicly.
If this was SportsCenter, that would be like such a hot take. Skip Bayless would have no idea. Stephen A. Smith would have no idea what to say if you drop that down. That is so good.
The joke I always say is like, how'd you learn so much? You got to drink a lot.
The power of food and beverage to lubricate an environment.
Resistance to change is hurting the church.
I'm not in the camp that God has a penis or a vagina or a body at all. I'm in the camp that God is a universal spirit.
This is the strangest podcast that I have been on. I don't even know what to do.
I'm kind of geeked up about this wine.
So this is my second glass, and it delivers a little more of a punch than I expected. So if I get a little loopy, it's your fault. You told me to drink on this show.
I will also say as a confession, I am a lightweight. So I've had like 3 sips of this wine and I'm already feeling it. So this is fun.
You've uncovered the mystery. You've exposed the formula.
You've just duct taped together a number of things that aren't normally hanging out together, and I'm here for it.
We're going to sit down at a table, we're going to have a glass of wine and some food, and we're going to talk about the beauty of Jesus.
Thanks for what you're doing with this podcast and for the creative way you're doing it and the beautiful, positive spirit in which you're doing it.
I really appreciate this venue, what you're doing. It is fun, and yet you dig into the deep stuff.
I've heard about your podcast for a long time, and I love that you're a pastor and that you explore the world of faith through wine. That's very unique.
I never thought of church history in terms of wine drinkers. I love this question. Really got my mind rolling.
You had me with herbaceous notes, I want you to know. I'm ready to just stay here and live in the wine tour.
I will never forget the first time I bought a bottle of wine by myself, which was yesterday.
If you're familiar with drunk history, I thought it's like drunk theology. So I got
a little spicy there. It's the peach wine.
Apparently the wine is, here we are. Queer we are. Beer we are. No, it's wine, Jeremy.
By the way, drinking this Pinot Grigio at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is making me even more direct in my communication than I normally would be.
I know why you have your guests drink wine. It makes sense now. Yeah, I get it. A little bit of liquid courage to really unleash the beast.
I think you've got a good podcast. Throw in the wine bit in there. That's nice, doesn't it? Cabernet and Pray, yeah.
Well, he considers himself a former pastor, but a current troublemaker, which means he will fit in just fine on this podcast. Welcome to Cabernet and Pray, Stuart Delony.
Jeremy, thanks for having me on here. It's always fun to have a reason to drink in the middle of the afternoon with somebody.
You know, I'm a lot of things, but I can be that for people. I can be your reason to drink in the afternoon.
Yes, you are our alcoholic Sherpa that you're going to carry us through this and all of it. It's great. Because it's not alcoholism if we're doing it at the same time, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
we don't have to be in
communion.
the room together. You just have to be connected somehow. And so listeners, if you are also drinking with us, we're all together. So
yes.
it counts as community when you do it while you're listening to a podcast of guys
I think, didn't
drinking.
Jesus say, like, when 2 or 3 gather to drink in my name, people get drunk? I don't know. Is that how it... Yeah.
I like that translation.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which version that is, but I'll roll with that. That's good. I like.
It's a new King James.
Yeah. All right. On that note, let's talk about what we're drinking then, since we clearly are getting into it. I'm bringing out something that I absolutely love for today's episode. I'm going to my beloved place. This is a 2022 Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley in Oregon, which is where my heart is when it comes to wine. This is a 2022 Helens from Stoller Family Estate, which is the first place I ever became a wine member of, and I'm still a wine member of, and they are fantastic. And this is named after the owner's aunt, and he has a number of like his really nice wines. And I always remember thinking, like, when you're going to name a wine after a family member, there's a lot of pressure there. Like, you really have to choose wisely, because so much of of how you view them, right, is going to come out. And so this is his aunt. He's got one for his wife. I think he's got one for his mom. But this is a fantastic wine. I think that this line that he makes has got like an elegant note to it, a little spice note to it, which if you have like a Pinot Noir from California, I don't always get those notes in those, but in the Oregon ones I do, and especially in a nice one. So Stuart, I am having a delightful glass. I'm thoroughly enjoying this. Tell us, what do you got going today?
Well, see, I'm drinking, I think this is named after someone's mother-in-law. No. No, this is Golden Gate Cellars. Apparently, I guess in the picture at the bottom of the Golden Gate Bridge, I think they make wine, is what this is implying.
Okay.
This is a 2023 California Cabernet Sauvignon. I feel like I'm getting notes of wine as I'm drinking this. No, I think it's more like blackberry a little bit, and some woody notes. It's decent. It goes down smooth.
Now, would you say you're a wine guy, or no? This is like you don't do it a ton.
I don't do wine a ton, but I do enjoy it. If I am a wine guy, I'm more of like a Merlot or a Cabernet anyways.
Okay.
But yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get a little bit of your backstory so listeners can kind of figure out who we talking to. One of the questions I love to begin with is, think about the last 10 years of your life, of your journey with God. And I just love in that window, how would you say your faith has changed in the last 10 years, so we can kind of see what this looked like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like that. The last 10 years were probably were the exit ramp from ministry for me. Would be the beginning of that 10-year period.
Okay.
And was kind of walking towards an exit ramp in ministry. My wife and kids and I had lived on the West Coast for a number of years. We lived north of Seattle. And about 10 years ago, I ended up moving to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, back to the East Coast. I'm originally from Atlanta, but we came back here to do some non-conventional church planting. You could kind of call it that, where we were just meeting people in a bar to have spiritual conversations that people weren't normally having. So that kind of brought us to this area. But through that process, I'd already kind of been walking through deconstruction anyways. But I feel like a lot of that, being able to do and share community space with folks of different faiths, rubbing different types of shoulders, really began to like open me up even more to realizing that a lot of the church structures that I grew up in were just absolutely horseshit. And I'm hoping we can say that on the show, but
you can use whatever words you need to use to describe.
Okay, good. Yes. So I think some of it was just unknitting from a lot of that. And probably how that journey has also changed me. Like, I think I deconstructed and then went through deconstructing myself in therapy through a process, a period after that, and then kind of arrive where I'm at. Let's see. Yeah, the past 10 years is being an empty nester now is new to me as well. Pushing all the kids off and really kind of trying to see what does faith look like to me in this crazy, insane world with politics and Christian nationalism and all of that other jazz that we're going through. So I don't know if that answered really your question, but that was kind of like I felt like running down a hill very quickly. And
okay, so you have this phrase on your website.
Yeah.
You say, after years in ministry, I realized the system cared more about power than people, so I traded the pulpit for a microphone. I'd love to hear, that's very similar to my journey, very similar to the journey of a lot of people who are probably listening to this. What was it for you? What was the realization that you started realizing, oh, this isn't what I thought it was? What did that look like?
I think it was a long time process walking through ministry. I think I was one of the weirdos that like took Jesus very seriously and very literally, kind of growing up in the church. Not like a WWJD kid or not a kid that really went to youth group. That wasn't my bag. But but the core teachings really resonated with me, and that's the kind of thing that's continued on. Whether it's me stepping away from the pulpit because I felt like there was too much architecture and hierarchy surrounding doing at the actual work of Christ, to where most of Sunday mornings and everything else in churches were not doing anything that looked like what Jesus is calling us to do. It was just performance. And then picking up the microphone was being able to, it was part of us moving here, and part of us doing kind of a non-traditional church plant. I actually started on local radio, doing a show where we would talk about things, and that kind of morphed and evolved and changed. I think around 2015, I started digging a lot more in politically because I was kind of seeing the way the sands of change were happening, and and then really dialing in on just the hypocrisy of Christianity now when it comes to politics is really kind of what launched into the podcast and really influences a lot of my writing.
How have you noticed? Because there's a huge difference here, and you're alluding to it. But talk about how have you noticed the difference of what you can say from the pulpit versus what you can say on a radio show or in a bar?
Well, when I was doing it on a radio show, if I would swear, I would have to make sure I had to bleep it. So if you're going straight for that, it's more arduous if you're having to edit it out later. No, I think that speaking in church, you kind of know how to toe the company line to some degree, the denominational line. You know, when you're preaching, you know kind of where the boundaries are. You know kind of where you're supposed to go and what will get you into trouble. Now, I never learned that very well, what gets me into trouble, and so that's kind of been throughout a lot of my ministry career, is my mouth and just me trying to be truthful got me into trouble with it. So I think there's more of careful talk. And then the radio, I think you're doing stuff more, the radio to podcasting was more just speaking exactly from where I'm at, what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and not having to have it go through all of those like denominational filters where you're just like, am I going to get in trouble? Or what hell am I going to cause right now for being honest?
Yeah, I have found, I still speak regularly in churches, and I still enjoy that. And I found, you can meet a lot of people there. That is still a space that can be transformative for a lot of people, but there is absolutely expectations. There are guardrails. There are, the rules, sometimes spoken, sometimes just implied. And you do kind of learn, or like, here's what you can and can't say. And then, for me, like with the podcast, you can go wherever it needs to go, and so there is no expectation. There is no, well, it has to fit this, even from like a structure, like, well, how long does it have to be? Like, it can be whatever it needs to be. Yeah. You asked earlier, are we allowed to say that on the, like, yeah, you can say whatever. I mean, it's just a different mode, right, of communicating. And even like, a lot of stuff we do, like in the wine scene, people lower their guard. They lower their expectation if they walk into a wine bar or a wine tasting. And so I have found a lot of times it's hard to have that same level of authentic conversations that we want to have in some of the spaces we might want to have them. And so I feel like it's like a constant battle to create a bridge to those spaces.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think it's also just about knowing your audience too. Because half the stuff, if I was to talk about what I talk about in my podcast, it would not really fit a Sunday morning church environment. It wouldn't speak to what they're coming to hear. It wouldn't really edify them in what they're seeking. But I feel like, being able to have a different audience and a kind of a different mission online, I think it just frees you to really go into what niche or what area you feel called into.
So much of what you do, and if anyone reads your book, this is blatantly obvious from like page 1. So much of what you do is based around humor, and you just have a heavy dose of humor into everything. I'd love to get your take on, what do you see as the role of humor when it comes to our spirituality? Because these are, a lot of times, humor is something that people don't think belongs, or they're surprised, like, whoa, why are you making a joke about it? And you have just leaned in, embraced it. That's become something you're very comfortable with. How do you see the role of humor with spirituality?
For me, a lot of it, the humor comes into the role of healing. In spirituality, a lot of just the book that we're talking about, the Tribulation Survival Guide that I've written. It's a deadpan manual for those that have been like, oh fuck, I missed the rapture. What do I do now? And so it's just kind of like that mentality of like, oh, this is a real manual for what happens if you miss the rapture. And in that context, and this is what I've heard from people, I'm really just making fun of a lot of that trauma culture that folks from evangelical circles grew up in, about worrying about the end times, about satanic panics, and all that other kind of thing. And so humor kind of gives you the ability to slide in and kind of like a Trojan horse. You can kind of go into places where people aren't expecting it, and you can say things poignant, and you can kind of just sneak it in when they're not expecting it in those different places. Because I've heard a lot of people to be like, yes, it was helpful. This helped me to heal from a lot of my end times trauma just by being able to laugh at the absurdity of it. Because that is, I mean, this book is satire, and it's written to necessarily just tease out the logical conclusions of really bad theology that we've been given. Just saying like, okay, yes, if this makes sense, then this will make sense if you run at it and tease it out. And I think it's a way for people to be able to also step back from the systems, look at them differently, and learn that, oh yeah, this is absurd, this is stupid, this is bad. And yeah, so I think some of it's necessary. I think laughter is necessary for processing.
I totally think so. And I think Jesus used it far more than we give him credit for.
Yes, yes. Jesus was very hyperbolic when he talked.
Yes.
And it doesn't always translate into how we hear it like preached.
Well, and just, the way we present him.
Yeah.
You know, like even when a preacher reads something with like a somber tone, I'm like, I don't think Jesus said it like that. I think it was a joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've had times where I'm like, no, don't read it like that. Like that's not how, it's not how I've always envisioned it. So.
Yeah, he's winding up the Pharisees on purpose in this moment here. He wasn't just like waxing like, oh, later this will be like written in scripture and put in stained glass. No. No, he's going after people. He's going after systems of power too, and humor can do that. Humor and satire can go after systems of power and name things that need to be said.
So you have brought humor to the tribulation, to end times, to something that, as you mentioned, people have a lot of fear on, and a lot of really bizarre fear. And I think that is what your book does such a good job at poking fun. And you're like, oh yeah, that is the thing I've heard. Or, there's so many times I'd be reading a section and I'm like, oh man, I remember being told that, or I remember, people really being afraid of that. What is it about that subject, about the end times, about the tribulation? What made you want to write that book? They're like, all right, this is where we need the humor now in this moment.
Okay, I wrote this book avoiding editing another book I had done.
Which are the best kind of books when you're avoiding another book?
No, but it was good. It's good. Yeah. So it was necessary for me to do that because I feel like the other book I was dragging my feet on was, it was intellectually correct, but it wasn't in my soul enough. Kind of correct to where I've gotten it up here, but I haven't gotten it here. And so I think there was a reason I was dragging my feet. It really goes back to, I've been a minister for a many number of years. I have been lifetime ordained, and then also been defrocked. Which we can get to that story. But it reminded me of during my original frocking, when I was actually becoming a pastor and having to sit in front of a board of people who would ask me questions about where's my theology, what do I believe about this? It's a firing squad to some degree, and I was apparently just I'm a glutton for punishment, and they had asked me. It was one of those softball questions I can ask. Well, is there anything that you disagree with in the Bible? Anything that you wish wasn't there, or anything like that? Where I should have probably just said, "No, it's inerrant.
I believe
it's all
all.
beautiful,
it's all
wonderful. Yes, it's great." And I was like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Oh, what?" I was like, "I could do away with the entire book of Revelation."
Oh wow,
and they were just like, and got very angry very quickly. But then you can get to a point where you can actually argue them into a place where they're like, I don't necessarily disagree with him, because my answer was, I grew up around Southern Baptist churches and in conservative culture, and I knew of in the church I grew up in, they had it was a Sunday school class on the book of Revelation, and that Sunday school class never ended. So they were constantly every Sunday just talking about
until the tribulation.
So but that was it, because it'd be some new thing they could talk about or some other thing to talk about with it. And
that's incredible.
I've seen that as a book that has distracted so much. Thanks, John Nelson Darby, from really the work of the gospel, because it teaches people that escape is an answer, that we don't have to be dialed in here. It teaches us to look for the signs or navel gaze, but don't look to our neighbors. It's because it's fun. It's X-Files. It's fantasy. It's sci-fi, depending on how you read it. If you read it incorrectly, or you could see it as something that's against empire. But people don't usually see Revelation as a book that's calling out empire. They see it as something else that's really telling us we can escape this place. Whereas I feel like the call of Christ is no. You're very much here. You very much need to be working here, and it's not about this. Yeah, it's not about escapism. And so yeah, I went for it because I feel like this is derailed Christianity so much.
I love that you answered that question with an entire book of the Bible rather than just giving like one subject.
Or one verse, I don't
like
this
one section. No, you took on an entire book of the Bible.
Yeah,
I feel like that says something about you that I like.
Well, good. It was eventually something that they didn't like, but that had more to do with supporting folks in the LGBTQ community.
Most of us have that story. I got in trouble when I was getting ordained about open theology. And got into open theism a little bit, and I was assigned a small group of elders, and we had to duke it out for a while, and then finally, like, one of them, just had to like agree to disagree, because I kept showing him verses that he had no explanation for, and I'm like, I can't believe what you're saying because of these verses,
Yeah.
And so I love that story. Before we I do want to talk about some parts of the book, but now I'm intrigued. Give us the defrocking story. What happened?
This is even less sexy. This is not even. It's not even exciting, and it's not like I wish it was one of those moments where you're able to throw something down on a table and This is like, so I around COVID, which is when kind of our like bar ministry or what we were kind of doing in this area kind of died, and it was a time where I was like, okay, I feel like ministry is changing. We're gonna quit doing what we're doing here, trying to figure out what's next, and so I just kept doing the podcast, and I got called. It was probably like 2 years ago. Not called. I got an email from some folks in the denomination who I haven't hung out with. I haven't really done anything with. But
which denomination are we talking about?
This is Churches of God General Conference. This is not the Speaking in Tongues Churches of God. This is more northeastern folks, and they said, okay, we haven't talked with you in a while, and we really want to sit down and have a meeting with you. And so when you get an email like, so what is this meeting about? Tell me, what is this about? Well, we'll just tell you in the meeting. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to tell me what this meeting's about before I go on this. And this went back and forth. Well, we just want to get to know you a little bit better, and we have some things we wanted to bring up with you. Tell me what this is about. And then eventually I was like, no. I was like, unless you guys are going to tell me what this is about. I've been in ministry meetings where people, much like yours, experience where they're trying to challenge me and do all of this other stuff. And I was like, I would at least like to know what this meeting is supposed to be about. Well, if you don't attend this meeting, we're going to remove your lifetime ordination, which is hilarious anyways, in a certain sense. My lifetime ordination, did they murder me? Is my life over?
Did they murder me?
And I was just like, no, well, if you don't come, you're not, that's it. And that was the last I heard. And so I was
you
like,
just didn't go.
No, so I only have two things I can assume. I think it's the second one, but one, I know they probably didn't like that I swore on my podcast, which again has nothing to do with ministry, and two, it's being supporting the LGBTQ community, which would be where I would probably lean harder in on their issue with me. But it wasn't doing me any good. It wasn't as if I was getting discounts at the grocery store with my frocking. So
I love the fact that you have a lifetime ordination that got revoked.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I know, because they even gave it to me in a frame. I was expecting it to like just somehow like turn to ash at some point.
It's even like that Banksy that just shreds itself.
Yeah, that's completely it. Yeah. It's the power of God. It just turns to ash and smoke. Yeah.
This is no longer valid, and we can revoke our lifetime
Dang it.
award to you.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the book. I have a couple sections I want to read and see your take on it. And just to give our listeners a flavor of your writing, very, very much satire, as you'll hear. So here we go.
How dare you?
You say, and so it begins, not with thunder, but with the gentle rustle of empty dockers and abandoned socks. The world, once heavy with sermons and casseroles, is now lighter, or is now quieter, lighter, perhaps even holier. But you, yes, you are still here, left behind not as punishment, but as possibility. A divine clerical error? Maybe. Or perhaps the heavens simply wanted to see what you do with the leftovers. So take a breath. You may not have ascended, but you've survived the opening act. There are still roles to play. Start small. Find shelter. Hoard snacks. Locate pants. This was never about escape. It was about enduring with style, spite, and a Costco card. Onward, unraptured one. The Antichrist awaits. Which is just so fantastic. So your book obviously pokes fun at the irrational fear that tons of people have about the idea of end times. Why do you think this subject is such easy fodder for people to manipulate others with fear?
I feel like it's one of those things that it fits very neatly into any kind of conspiracy theory, because I feel like you are ending up playing off of people's natural anxiety, because you end up typically have. Well, I mean, if you think of just the structure of a church, people come because they want to be able to connect with God. They've got questions about the way the world works. They're anxious about spiritual things or heavenly things and all this other stuff. And again, a pastor has a lot of power to be able to control what they are thinking about the world around them. And just kind of like any good grifty relationship. And it's one of those things where you continue to feed this person something. So you feed them anxiety. So you're feeding this natural anxiety they have, and then you're making them more paranoid and just afraid of things that are happening naturally in the world. And the more that you do this, you begin to just really warp their entire worldview into things. You know, we've heard biblical worldview. It's a warped worldview that you've been given to be able to look at things. But what it does is, for the church or for the pastor that's wielding this, it creates almost this like symbiotic relationship where you tell them like everything else you know in the world around you, don't believe that. I've got the truth for you. And only we here in this church know the truth. And so it's like a good drug dealer, man. Like, you know, the first hit's the best, but it keeps you coming back week after week. Like, I need it. I need my worship. But it feels like that. And I think it feeds into people's natural fears. Because it gives people certainty in situations that have no certainty.
Yeah.
You offer promises for questions that we can't possibly answer. But when people want to have those certain answers, and it makes them feel comfortable. Even if it's crazy, it makes them feel comfortable.
There's a few sections in the book, and I just love that you did it. You would give like historical examples of people who did this. And it was just like this reminder as I was reading of like, this has always been a shtick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just for generation after generation, this is like a go-to. And, you know, you're right. It absolutely works if you allow it to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It works if you allow it to work, but we've been groomed into that in so many churches to where this person with the pulpit that's on the raised stage, they have the authority. They go and commune with God, unlike me, just this nobody that just sits in the pews. And so you give this kind of authority to them, and then you want to hear what they have to say, especially if they are the ones that can speak to God. Why wouldn't you want to listen to their words? But again, it's just it's a grift in the way we do this. And the funny thing is, it's more pagan than it is Christian. This looking for the end times and the end of the world, because this really came about from John Nelson Darby in like the early to mid 1800s or 20s to 50, where John Nelson Darby, this dude that had no spiritual background. He was a lawyer, but decided to try to figure out how can we make the Old Testament fit kind of into the New Testament towards moving towards this. And he created this idea, which a lot of people have hung on to, which is not part of historical Christianity, even though the evangelicals would act like it is, but it's not. It's not that old.
Yeah, well, it works, you know, so that's why I think it captures fear works anyways, but then when you have an ongoing pool of you can constantly play to this fear if you want, and none of it's, as you point out in the book, none of it's verifiable, right?
Correct.
So you can make these claims, and you even mock like the end times, you know, prophecy of like, make sure it's vague, make sure that it's not measurable, you know, which again, all of that, I'm just like, that is so what it is. I mean, I remember I made the news years ago, and I think it was Harold Camping when he made his big thing, and there was like a news station that was like looking for someone to basically say, like, is this guy legit or not? And I just gave some quote where I was like, this is the most absurd thing, whatever. And I made it to like the evening news, of like local pastor denounces Harold Camping. And I was just like, and then I watched it come and go, right? It's like, this is just the shtick, and there's no way to verify it. So there's always ripe for the grifter. And I love that your book, through satire, hopefully gets people to realize, like, yeah, I don't want to give people this power over me with this absurd theology and ideology. And again, as you poke fun at it, it's almost like as you read your book, you're like, how could anybody take this serious? Except I've lived my entire life watching people take it serious.
Yeah. It's absolutely insane. Even growing up around it. I don't know what your background was, but did you grow up in and around? Yeah. And but we're fed stuff. We believe stuff. All the big adults that we think are great are telling us stuff with conviction. Why wouldn't we believe it as kids? Because we trust it, and it ends up taking us down these crazy roads. But you mentioned camping. I've always wondered about folks that he says it's going to happen on this date, gets it wrong, and then he's going to have another date next year. So I mean, there's some balls in that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some.
I mean, that is like charisma, like you're flaunting. I can literally convince people of anything.
Yeah. And just keep going. Keep going. Yeah.
Like, reality has no bearing on me, which I think we're seeing with our president.
Yeah.
Like, when you have that level of, again, charisma feels like too nice of a word for it, but whatever you want to call it, right? That ability of, I can convince you of something in the face of reality if you would look. But that's what you see with this theology. And again, I think we're seeing the concepts your book are mocking. We're seeing it on a grand scale all around us, but it's the same idea.
It's exactly the same idea. And the sad thing is, and I don't know, I'm not going to prescribe this to all of the Orange Messiah's followers, but I do think that their denial of reality with their eyes, it's you have to keep showing up for that, because I feel like that's an active pursuit for them to constantly continue to say, well, hold a second, I am seeing things with my eyes, hold a second, I need to do that. And so I think at some point you have to begin to ask, and it's easy for us to point fingers at the leaders, but it's also the ones that follow them. I think that there's something to where they're afraid. I think there's a psychological part of them that is afraid to leave, because it means admitting that they were wrong this entire time, having to own up to all of this other kind of stuff. And I think it's just easier to stay instead of having to take that road.
Not only that, but then however long they've been invested in this, whatever work they've done was all for naught.
Yep. All the bridges they burned with people.
Well, and I ended up meeting with a group of people who were disgruntled with some things that I said recently, and they were all over 70, and they were very much into MAGA theology and all of that. And what was interesting to me that I didn't even realize it in the moment, and then I replayed this because in the moment it caught me off guard. But a number of them said, you got to consider the age, okay? So they're all over 70. A number of them said, I'm not even on Facebook. I don't even check things. Now, Facebook to them equals social media, right? Because that's the only social media they're in. But a number of them said that, and in the moment, it kind of caught me off guard. Like, why are you telling me that? I didn't understand. Like, okay, I didn't ask if you're on Facebook, right? But then what I realized they were saying is, I'm not even aware of what's going on. And they're almost saying that as a built-in defense. Like, you might be saying something, but I don't even know what you're addressing. And then I realized that's the way you deal with the cognitive dissonance is if I don't see it, then I don't have to explain it. And then I think that's what happens is I'm just going to pull way back from this.
Yeah.
And then I don't stare at it. Because if you stare at it, then you have that dissonance of this does not align with anything I'm hearing. What do I do with that? And I think, again, what I love what your book is doing is like taking a subject that feels safer to talk about this than what the mess we see going on around us. But if we can use this subject to teach a concept of like, hey, let's approach this rationally with logic and reason and like sit down. And if you can do it here, you can do it to everything else that they're telling you.
That's I think that helps. And it's the one thing that you were making me think of within this. And I don't know if you're 70-year-old fans, I guess, that you were having a fan event. Was this?
I don't think they would call themselves that.
They were groupies that you were meeting for a meet and greet. Yeah, but when I think of them, oftentimes what I've noticed too, when you end up calling out like MAGA folks for things, you're not really calling them out. You can call it the president, but they take it personally.
Yes.
And so they've so like fused their identity
100%
with him. And so even to call out saying like, for saying like, well, he's rambling on, like, or he's incoherent, then it makes them feel like you're saying like, oh, you're a fool. And so that's sometimes, I guess, why satire, you can slide things in a little easier than direct humor with stuff. So I've been having to try to figure out where is that medium with being able to reach folks as well. Because I've pissed off a ton of them with this book too. Just the marketing.
Well, and I can imagine someone, if you do believe this and then you read your book, you could have that same reaction of like, he's making fun of me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Whereas you're not. You're making fun of the idea and what the idea has become. But if you have attached your identity to that idea, then you will receive that satire as a personal offense. And this is, I think, a challenge of communication right now. Like, how do we communicate to these people without them taking it personal so that you can help them see, no, you're like, I want to unattach you to this idea, right?
No, you're right about it, because I think the key in this weird time period that we're in is always making sure that we punch up and not punch down. Because it's even though the followers may not like us punching up against their orange messiah, but I do. And my point of the book was also not making fun of those that have followed these grifters before too. Because I grew up with it. Like, I grew up with my mom watching Jim and Tammy and sending money to this because they were saying this and that or the other. I grew up around different circles where, I saw people getting ripped off by this kind of stuff. And so I know the deep desire for people will come really, really, really vulnerable searching for something for God into these church spaces or to these televangelist spaces because they're wanting something. They hurt. There's something that they want, and they're wanting God to fix it or to affirm them or whatever. And people are incredibly vulnerable in these places, and that's a lot of what drives me being pissed off at those that control these systems that hurt people. Are the fact that folks are genuinely looking for help, and we're giving them answers that make them feel better, but they're not making them any better. They're making them worse. And you're just giving them nothing. You're giving them hope and emptiness.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, here's another one that I enjoyed.
Let's go back to the fun stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, we need some jokes.
Some levity.
Once you suspect you've been left behind, it's crucial to determine who else is still around. Not all survivors will be non-believers. Some might be part of the ever-hopeful remnant, clinging to the idea that they were chosen for a special mission. Others are rapture rejects, some due to divine clerical error, others disqualified for playing Dungeons and Dragons or accidental blasphemy of the Holy Spirit during a youth group retreat, which your last point there is going to hit some people because, man, that blasphemy of the Holy Spirit has jacked some people up over the years.
Yeah.
Here's my question. I love this.
Okay.
Do you think most people are going to be surprised by who's around them in eternity?
Yeah. I hate this question because also I feel like it's irrelevant for my life right now on earth, because I'm one of those ones where I don't even know if heaven exists, cool. If it doesn't, cool. It still doesn't take away from what Christ called us to do. And yeah, I would think so, but I think it may surprise us a lot who's going to be in heaven either way, because sometimes I remember we would be like, well, when I was I remember being like a youth pastor, well, do you think God has enough grace to forgive Hitler? This is,
it always goes there.
It always goes to Hitler. Or do you think God has enough grace to forgive Donald Trump? Maybe now. So if we want to, we'll update that reference.
Why would he need forgiveness, Stuart?
Yeah, that's true. He's basically God's son anyways. No, I think that... yes, to your answer, and we're trying to be funny now. I do think people would be very surprised on who's in heaven. I think on both sides, too. I think that if we do believe that God is forgiving and graceful and all his grace is enough, I think it's going to shock a bunch of people.
Well, here's why I think that question matters to the here and now. because one of the conclusions I've come to is, so like I've changed my view on this. I think Jesus is going to save everybody. I have learned this is a very offensive thing to believe about Jesus. And you might think, why would that be offensive? What, wouldn't everybody want Jesus to save everybody? And the answer is no. And the reason why no is because they want a sense of justice to be done to the people that they don't like, or the people that have wronged them, or, you know, who, Hitler being obviously the proverbial example, but you know, there's a lot more examples people have than that, right? Of anybody, you know, in this camp or whatever, they need them to be excluded for them to feel like heaven was meaningful. And so to me, I actually liked even the section of like looking around you, like who's there, I thought was an intriguing thing to add to it, because I think people will be very surprised whatever comes next, right? However that plays out. I don't think it's going to be this close-knit people just like me that most Christians secretly hope is going to be true. And if it's not that, that should fundamentally, radically shift the way we treat people now.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with what you're saying with that too. And yes, because I also think that heaven isn't going to be like pearly gates and looking like Graceland or Mar-a-Lago, how like we've always like described it. Or we're Oprah, like you get a mansion, you get a mansion, you get a mansion. Yeah, or jewels in the crown. We're gonna have so many jewels in our crowns. It's gonna be bling to hell. It's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be Vegas, man. I don't want Vegas in heaven. But you know, maybe heaven is Vegas, because Vegas accepts everybody. You know, anyone can come.
Look at that.
So it
See
is
what you did there.
Vegas is all about grace, apparently. Grace and taking your money, but.
And there's no time in Vegas. That also could work well. You know what I mean? It's like, it's
true.
just always.
It's true.
What time? Like, no one knows. No one knows what time
You're
it is
right.
in Vegas.
This is beautiful, man.
We're on to something here. Let's write a book about heaven being Vegas.
Yes.
This will be part 2.
Okay.
Okay, so you get, I'm going to spoil this for listeners, which I feel like it's not spoiling.
You're fine.
But
that's fine. I'll forgive you.
You get to the end of the book, and I feel like you lower your cards a little bit, and you show kind of what you're indicating here. And I actually thought it was beautiful the way you say this. So this is still funny, but this is a different kind of satire where you begin to show like, hey, here's kind of the point of this. And I thought this was a beautiful section. You say, this is the truth no prophecy sells, that maybe the world doesn't end in a bang or trumpet blast, but in slow forgiveness, in rebuilding, in the sacred act of staying. You waited for the heavens to split, and they didn't. You prepared for death and were handed groceries. You survived a story that was supposed to end, and now you must write what comes next. Live, just in case. Because grace was never about escape. It was about endurance. And revelation was never a threat. It was a mirror you now set down beside your shovel. So go, plant something. And if the trumpets sound again, let them find you mid-laughter, covered in dirt, alive. I love the beauty of you taking it away from the navel-gazing, star-gazing to go build something, plant something, do something, love someone near you.
Yeah.
And just to, like, why is that? I suspect that's something you hope people get out of the book of, like, after you're done with all the laughter, you go, oh, yeah, this is the point, right?
Go figure out what's real. Go touch grass. Go like commune with your neighbor. Go figure out what's like, you know, what is broken in your community that needs help. Go to those places that really matter, instead of us trying to do things that are. I think we like to be attached to grandiose things, especially when we're in the age of social media now, where everything needs to seem bigger and grander. But I think it's in the small. I think it's in the small little things that I feel like where grace is living nowadays. The things that remind us that we're human, the things that remind us that we are here on the earth, and that like nature and others matter to us. You know, those kind of things that we can get so lost in it because we go into these. You know, we doom scroll, we invest so much online and forget that there's so much outside of whatever this sphere is that we're in now. And there's so much more to live for.
Yeah, I just love the idea of you can spend so much time on your theology and you can miss what's happening around you. And I think Christians right now are so busy on so many weird things. And,
yes.
And they're missing the chance to love their neighbors well.
And it's interesting when you tell people things like that. Well, why aren't you just going back to doing that? And I think for a lot, they just don't want to. I think a lot of American Christianity is very, very comfortable and lazy right now. I think it's all about preference, or at least wanting their church or heaven to be like a country club, like you'd mentioned. Otherwise we've got the haves and the have-nots. Yeah. Only want the sheeps in here, not them goats. But I think it's become grandly about so much about comfort and not really about doing the honest, simple work of Christ, of just being human to your neighbors or just those that you're in contact with. I think, I don't know, I felt like we've almost lost the art of living because we're in too many virtual spaces nowadays. But I don't know. I think we'd lost the art of living probably in the 80s, 70s. I don't know. There's probably, we can complain. We can be old men complaining about, back when we had it. Back in the good old days. Yeah.
But this is why, we can often make things like, spiritual conversations happen in the church and they sound like this and they don't sound like that. And they don't. This is why I love having a glass of wine with someone, is because there's a lot less bullshit when you're having a glass of wine and having a conversation. And I learned this as a lead pastor, right? We would go out to the winery on Saturday, have these phenomenal conversations. I'd see the same couple on Sunday and they'd be prim and proper, And I remember thinking, I like the conversation better at the winery because like that was a real version of you.
Yeah.
And there was no expectations. It was just like, how are you doing? What's going on? And then you get into the setting and again, it doesn't have to be that way. It just tends to be that way, right? Of like, oh, I'm supposed to act this part. I'm supposed to do this thing. And theology, unfortunately, can do that when you get lost in it and you miss the chance of like, go be a good human to the other humans around you. And that's actually the best way to follow Jesus, is like not having the 10 right beliefs about Jesus. It's talking in a way that looks like Jesus. Like people go, I kind of hear Jesus in you, the way that you treat me. Like that means more. I don't really care what you believe about Jesus at the end of the day. I'd rather you look like Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I love two things that you were saying too. I'm trying to remember both of them now. But mentioning spaces, you were talking about like going to wineries and stuff and how they would feel that this would feel so much different and to feel more honest. And it's because it was just a safe space. Oftentimes the churches aren't safe spaces. You step into a church, you're stepping into a system or a program or something, a machine. You're stepping into machinery.
Yeah.
And I feel like the winery, there's not that machinery there, that you're able just to be, and you're able to breathe, and you're just co-people. You're not a pastor and a congregant. You're not any of those things. You're just like, oh yeah, we're people. We can drink wine. Cool. This is what it's about. Because I think too often where churches can teach us that, you mentioned like knowing the right 10 things. I think from doing discipleship and trying to walk with people I did ministry for 20 years. I think that people can feel satisfied with being able to memorize scripture and to be able to regurgitate it. But I think also like so much of Christ was like, and go and do.
Yeah.
And I feel like you don't really understand scripture at all. If you're just simply sitting in a church talking about it, intellectualizing it, memorizing it, doing all of this, it doesn't make sense until you're actually out doing what you're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, I just feel like it's just two different realms that you're talking about. It's a very different realm from those pastors that I've known, people that have only been in seminary and only like been a pastor and keep themselves insulated from the rest of the world, versus those that do know the Bible, that just know how to go and hang around people. And like you said, drinking does help.
Well, and I think we're going to come into an era where the churches that can remember that and can foster that will be the ones that will offer hope to people, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, we're not going to get you here and rally around a bunch of doctrines.
Yeah.
We're going to love well. We're going to be a community that loves well. And I think when the church is known for that again, and that becomes the reason you want to be a part of a community, totally different than, hey, they give me a sense of certainty and the right beliefs and, reinforce all that. No, they're going to actually help me love people better and experience that love myself. Like that's the invitation. And I think collectively we've gone away from that in so many churches that that's going to be the work in this next season, is getting back to that.
It feels like it's gonna be a long next season to get there. Yeah.
It feels like a lot of wine.
It feels like that, and it also kind of feels like one of those like Moses situations where you're like, well, I'll help get you guys near the promised land. I may never see it. Because this will
be great for your kids.
Yeah,
your kids are gonna love this.
The church in America has dug a hole with a lot of shit that they're going to have to bail themselves out of. And I think just being able to walk away from certain structures that they think are the church, and not realize that the church is always people. The church is always people. It's not platforms. It's not systems. It's not programs. It's always 100% people. Because I come back to this, and this is where the church has gone wrong. When my denomination sent me through, like, it was all this church planting training stuff that you go through. And there was a guy that's an expert in church planting. I remember him explaining to us, and he's like, well, as you're planting a church, you have to realize the people that you're starting this with, they're the scaffolding. They're just going to be there to help you get things going, and they probably won't be around, and you don't have to worry about them. And in that moment, it dawned on me, and I was like, wait a second, so they don't matter.
Well, they matter to your ends. They're a means
that's
to your ends.
That's so Machiavellian. It has nothing to...
Oh, yeah.
And so then it hit me, too, especially in America, the way that we do church is, what do? As soon as you were established in church, the moment you establish a church, that church is about keeping that church alive. It is no longer about being there for people. So it's one key is, how do I keep myself alive as an entity, not about how do I continue to give myself out to others. Yeah. And at that moment, it becomes selfish.
I remember I was at a lead pastor conference.
Oof, those are fun.
This was for like churches. I think all the churches you had to be over 1,000 to be invited to this.
Okay.
And they would like do these sessions of like, here's the latest and greatest tricks that we know. And I remember one of them did this presentation on why every single church in the room should do an At the Movies series in the summer. And which, do whatever series you want to do. But the way it was presented was At the Movies, and then it was like facts about if you do it X amount of weeks, you'll get this percentage. I mean, like, formulaic as...
This is multi-level marketing.
Oh, dude. I was blown away by the presentation. I was like, I'm out of this. And then the guy that gave the presentation happened to be like at my table. So he sits down afterward and he's like, so, you know, how long are you going to do it this summer? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be honest with you, I don't think I'm going to do this. And he's like, did you not hear, like, you'll grow? And again, it was something crazy, like, it's off the top of my head.
It's guaranteed.
Like 35% growth or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, Jeremy, I guarantee you it will grow 35%. And I said, you may be right. You may be right. I said, but it would fundamentally kill something inside of me to make that trade.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not wired for that. I can't be that guy. I'm not judging another church that does. I'm just telling you, for me to say, hey, I'm going to go do this series that I'm not personally stoked on and don't feel like that's how I'd want to preach because I'm going to get 35% increase in attendance. But I think you're right. This is what
money,
church often becomes. Here's the formula. This is your scaffolding. Here's how you build it. And again, what people don't realize is, like, if you've never been in those spaces, you may not even know that exists. You're like, no, all the pastors, like, when you're in those spaces and you're like, wait, this is what we're doing. And then, you know, guys like you and I walk away from versions of it that we're like, I'm not doing that anymore. And people go, oh, you must be so bitter. It's like, I'm not really bitter. I just don't want to go do that. Like, that's not what I ever signed up for. And when I discovered that's what it was, I'm out. I'm not bitter. I'm following Jesus out the door, right?
Yeah, I want to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
This guy, but I can imagine this guy sitting down at a table. Jeremy, come on. Your church right now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to guess. You probably, your church, you probably have anywhere from 25 to 35 guys named Chris. Now, what if I could guarantee you that you could get 10 more Chris's?
Oh, yeah.
You know.
No, but it was almost like a money back guarantee. Like, Jeremy, you cannot lose on this. And I remember saying, like, I'm not arguing that it wouldn't work. I'm not even attempting that argument with you. I'm just saying I can't be that guy.
Yeah.
Like,
this is a bet it can't lose.
I can't do it. I can't do that. And I would just encourage people, like, that goes on more than you realize, which is why some of us have a hard time navigating those spaces. It's not because we're angry at the church. It's because that's not the church we ever signed up for.
And then we got angry at it after that point a little bit.
Sure.
Because I feel like some of that is just gross. I feel like some of that is just so, like, ostensibly
well,
just
then when
gross.
you gaslight me on my way out, then now I got issue with you of like,
I'm allowed to feel something here. Yeah. His grace isn't sufficient for this moment.
Oh, that's great.
You know. But isn't it weird how It is how faith almost sounds like like franchising or marketing or multi-level marketing or all this other kind of stuff where it's just, if we only can do this more, we can get more people into heaven. Because I mean that's part of me too. Like I part of my career is I worked for the evangelistic organization as well too, and you get to the place where you're just looking at numbers and not humans, and you're just doing things that are just, that's eventually what. Yeah, I worked for a number of years with an evangelistic organization. I was on their leadership board, and I started realizing I kept asking questions that were just a pain in the ass to everybody constantly. And I thought I was doing a difference of like helping them out. And at some point you realize, no, you're just really just being a pain in their ass, and they don't want what you're saying, because it's not simply about praying a prayer. I mean, that is the silliest thing that we have boiled down evangelism to. It's about the ABCs of our faith, admitting, believing, committing. And as long as they do that, you're fine and you're in heaven. That's not teaching anybody how to live, what we're inviting people into. It's not any of that. And it's just all nothingness and learning how to manipulate people and get better results.
Well, we've bastardized the Great Commission.
Yep.
And then ends justify the means. Get the Great Commission done. However you got to do it is spiritual and holy. And leave as many bodies behind as you got to.
Well, what's even hit me from being around missions and stuff like that too is I feel like the Great Commission was almost like a challenge. Like, if we can do all of these things, we'll somehow like Jesus is sitting around in heaven like he's lazy. He's like, all right, have they done it all yet? Nope. All right. Not today. Yeah. Have they?
Wake me up tomorrow.
Has everyone heard? Nope. Not today. All right. But it's this idea that somehow if we were just like everyone were to hear the gospel, like we just make it as simple and stupid and flimsy as possible. If everyone can hear that dumb message, then somehow Jesus is going to come back and we can get out of this shithole. But no, doing the real work of like, it's very, very different. It's very, very different teaching people that, yes, like forgiveness, grace, all of these other things. This is very difficult work to do. And I feel like if you're honestly doing the work of Christ, you're not going to make a ton of money doing this. This isn't one of those get-rich-quick schemes. It's you follow the ways of Christ. No, this is probably a way to get poor or to just have less. And so yes, so I think those that are like, well, prosperity gospel, that's a whole other conversation. But
my goal, the rest of my life, is to someday make as much as I made as a lead pastor, doing non-lead pastor things. I'm not doing well in that so far, but someday. That's what people don't realize. Like, not only is there certainty in it, there's a good paycheck in it, and it works until it doesn't. All right, on that optimistic note, let's transition.
We're
gonna ask you.
You're like, come on, this is humor and satire. We're gonna have fun here, right? This guy's gonna be
No, I suspected we might go here as I saw.
Oh no,
you and I are too aligned on the stuff that we talk about. I was like, we're gonna go there. But let's talk about wine for a little bit, and we'll lighten it up.
Yep.
Admittedly, you're not a huge wine guy, so I want you to see what you got here. If I were to ask you, Stuart, what's the best glass of wine you've ever had in your life? Is there a story that comes to your mind? Can you think of the bottle? Can you think of where you were, who you were with? Why was it so special? Is there anything you've got that you're like, I think that was my favorite wine experience ever?
No.
Nothing, huh?
I can say I can think of a different situation where it was, I think it was just two other pastors and we were at some sort of a conference, and it wasn't wine, but it was whiskey, and it was just, I think we were over like what you were talking about. It was one of these conferences that you're at, and it's selling you as pastors, or it's telling you you're not enough because then you need to do this kind of stuff, and I just felt way over marketed in it, and it was just kind of gross. And I just remember being able to sit and have a drink with some people and go like, yeah, that felt gross. Oh, do you too? Okay, yeah, okay. So I'm not the only one here, and I think sometimes being able to know that you're not the only one, or you're not the crazy one, in circles where everyone is just eating it up, they're just like, oh, more Kool-Aid, more Kool-Aid, more Kool-Aid. It's helpful to know, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. And so I think sometimes those kind of conversations, like you'd mentioned too, like this, being able to have a drink and have honest conversation, I think is beautiful, especially in spaces where we've been taught to not always be honest.
Yeah. Well, that becomes a holy moment for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I love that. All right. Which member of church history would you trust to pick out a bottle of wine for you? And who would you not trust? And why?
Church history. I think both answers would probably be Jesus, because he'd probably just pick out like a bottle of water and be like, no, that's not a good answer. Church history, who would be better for drinking wine?
So you're going to trust someone to go get you a bottle. Who are you trusting?
I'm going to mess up what I'm saying. Isn't St. Francis of Assisi was a Franciscan monk, I believe. So, and I know the Franciscans were also into making wine and other things as well, too. So I think I'd also have a good conversation whether he wasn't into making wine or not with St. Francis, or someone like Brother Lawrence, I think would be more interesting. I think for folks that were able to see things a little slower, to see things that were more about presence than performance, to also seeing God in the small things. I think those two could be interesting. Who would I not trust? To pick me out a good bottle of wine, Billy Graham.
I think he'd be terrible. Got that answer.
Yeah. I think he'd be terrible.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I would.
The hell is this, Billy?
I would not want him to pick out a bottle of wine for me either.
No.
I like that, Stuart. That's good.
Yeah.
What is something you used to believe that it turned out later you were wrong about?
Oh God, so many things. I thought the ending of Stranger Things would be good. I thought
I have not seen it, but my son did not like it.
Okay, your son he's correct. Hell. Yeah, that's a big one. I think just even like the way scripture is read around hell, I think of how I was raised to think that folks in the LGBTQ community were abominations and wrong. I think that was absolutely wrong. I never preached against it, but I knew that was still part of my upbringing and growing on that. But yeah, hell. I did a lot of working for an evangelistic organization, hellfire and brimstone kind of stuff, to where you're just like, I love these kids, so I don't want them to go to hell. So then, yeah, it just feels like that was more like, sometimes preaching on hell is like abuse in those kind of things, to where like you always see these situations like, well, I'm only hitting you because I love you. And it's one of those things that you're not hitting them, but you are doing that to them spiritually and terrifying them. Because, yeah, if heaven was that compelling, why do you need to use abject fear and terror to be able to prove your point?
It's not that compelling. That's the
problem. I know.
Neither is Jesus to them.
Yeah, and Jesus.
And it is always said, like you just packaged it, where I'm just showing I don't want you to go there. It's always as a concern. This is empathy. Yeah. It's like,
I love you.
No, this is a backhanded threat that if I don't do what you're saying, that's what awaits me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I know it is, and I remember it in its hollowest of terms. I was probably 12, and there was a kid I'd grown up with, and they went to our church, and his dad had died, and his dad was never the guy that went to church. So it was like the two sons and the mother went, but we were always worried about his soul. And he had died, which is tragic too, especially for someone to die probably in their, I think, 40s or 50s. And the family, it was all very dour and like, oh, this is so sad. And then I remember it was almost this moment where it's like, wait, everyone, we found this. We found his childhood Bible, and it had a confirmation card in it that he had prayed a prayer when he was 5. Yay! Now we can turn this into a celebration. And I just remember even as a 12-year-old being like, what is this?
They found the golden ticket.
It was, and it was so weird. And I know I'm not making fun of them, because I understand like the systems they're in, that would give them that would help them to be able to not be like, oh, my beloved is roasting in hell forever.
Sure.
It's the worst barbecue party. But also at the same time, just how much controlling and delusional that is for people to have to be like, we're not going to celebrate his life or who he was as a person, but we're now, oh gosh, all we want to think about is hell. Now it's so dehumanizing to the way people live their lives or who they are, and it's so judgmental at the same time too.
Yeah, it's worth changing your mind on. I like that.
Yeah.
What do you see as the main issue facing Christianity in the United States today?
The easy answer is stuff like Christian nationalism. I think the biggest thing is, I think the churches are teaching the actual gospel. I think Christianity has become selfish and comfortable. I think that's really what it is. I think Jesus' teachings they're not like, I mean, you just kind of read them and none of this is a get out of hell free card. This is a get off your ass and go do something card. And it's not fun. And there's times where it is wonderful and it is great, but there's also a lot of times where it's about getting your fingers dirty. And it's messy. Being involved with people is messy. And that's the sad thing is in most churches, I feel like most ministry should be really messy. Not messy in the way that a lot of Southern Baptist pastors are getting arrested for doing gross, messy things. We're not talking about that messy.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm ideologically messy because people's lives are messy. And in that way, because I think that we prioritize Sunday morning over actual like spiritual growth or life and community or messiness within all of that. So yeah, I think Christians need to put on their big boys and girl pants and kind of just go out and do the messy work of Christ.
That's good. What's something blowing your mind right now that you're learning?
Part of what we've actually talked about, because we were talking about some of this earlier, because I've been working through a piece on identity fusion. And when we were talking about how folks see their identity almost infused with Trump. And for me, who's a person who likes being sarcastic, who likes having a sense of humor, who also likes being cutting and an asshole at times as well too, I'm beginning to see more and more that I know I've not had many pieces that I write that I hate what I'm writing when I'm writing it. And I'm writing it and going like, I know this is true and I don't want to be saying these things, but I think that if we are ever going to heal things in our country, this isn't even spiritual. With the political divide that we're in nowadays, there's those of us that see reality and there's those of us that don't see reality. And it's easy to consistently dunk on them for those that don't, because they are frustrating and they cause pain, and they cause pain for lots of people. And their ignorance and doing this in the name of Christ is infuriating and makes us rage, or at least makes me rage inside to say that we're doing this as a Christian. But I also know that if we're ever going to move towards a thing called healing, or going back to some sort of normalcy, we're going to have to start creating certain off-ramps for people. And I'm not saying remove accountability. I'm not saying any of those things. But I think that there's a part of us in our hearts that, at least for me, I want to see some public humiliation. I want to see some public shame, because I feel like people have done such disgusting things. You kind of want to see that, and it feels like it would feel good. But I feel like I have to give up some of that. I think that for us to be able to say that we need to offer an off-ramp for some people, because some people aren't. Some people are committed to the grift, they're committed to the Kool-Aid, they're committed to the hate and the bigotry. But I feel like there's some other people that have gotten caught up in it, where their identities are caught up in it, and they can't see a way out. So I feel like that is something that I'm learning lately, that a lot of the reason that people continue in the places they're at, it's more of a psychological issue. It's not an intellectual, it's not even a spiritual issue. It's a psychological one, because I feel like they don't feel safe to leave whatever they brought themselves into.
Yeah.
And I hate that I'm writing this.
Is this the book that you were?
No, this is not the book. No, this is a piece for what I write for. I write for Patheos. No. But it's one of those things where I feel like grace is going to need to happen, and there's going to be times where we're going to want to say, "I told you so." And I, for one, being a person that have had to cut people out of my life because they were so horrendous and toxic and believing, and that doesn't mean you let the gates and the doors wide open, because I feel like there's things for being psychologically safe for yourself, and certain boundaries are helpful. But I think that there are going to need to be people that are going to need a space to be able to off-ramp from the toxicity that they've been in and they've identified with, and I don't fully know what that looks like, and I feel like that is also very messy work. And it's work that I would rather just make fun of. I'd rather just make fun of people. I'd rather just feel intellectually superior and dunk on folks, and that would feel good. But yeah, that's messing with me nowadays. I feel like I haven't even changed some of my rhetoric even more, depending upon audiences I'm talking with. Because that is the sad fact of the matter of, if we're this polarized, there's only two ways out. Either we're just going to continue to keep trying to kill each other, either ideologically or physically, or through policy, or we're going to have to be able to find a different way, because I feel like there's a lot of people that need to be shown that there is a different way. Because those folks that follow the Orange Man were grifted into that place through grievance and pain, much like anything in the tribulation and all this other kind of stuff. And it's no different. And, I think at some place, even though those people say vile and horrible things, and it makes us angry, we have to also realize they're hurting where they're at, and they need some sort of an off-ramp, but I don't know what that looks like. But it's been an idea that's messing with me that I hate.
I had a guy named Caleb Campbell, I don't know if you know who that is, on a previous podcast episode, and he works a lot. He calls himself a missionary to Christian nationalists. And he made the point on our episode where he said they didn't logically get themselves into this situation. It was an emotional. So he's like, you can't logically get them out of it. You have to emotionally help them out of it. And I thought that was such a fascinating insight, is we always bring the logic of like, let me show you why this makes no sense and why this is stupid. And then you wonder, why are they not hearing us? And it's like, because that's not how they got into it, right? They got into it because they were scared, or they were, they needed somewhere to belong or somewhere to feel seen. And, so it's like, until you meet them there, they're going to have a hard time getting out.
And as one who is deconstructed, I was reminded when I was even beginning to write some of this that I was writing, I know what it's like to leave community, to deconstruct, to walk away from a pulpit. There's a cost to it. And you lose friends, you lose people because they don't understand the path that you're walking on. And so it is hard, but it's also different, because I think a lot of us that have deconstructed kind of went into this more for faith and ideological reasons, and we're choosing to leave it, as opposed to being stuck in a situation where we're just like, I don't know how to get out. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So I don't know. I feel like I have to have grace and say I've been there too in different ways.
Yeah, that's good. What's something you're excited about?
What is something I am excited about? I'm constantly excited about. Hey, we just entered the Lunar New Year, if that even matters for anything like that too.
That's a big deal for you?
I don't know, but it's cool. It's looking for other stuff that's interesting. I'm excited for. I don't really know. I feel like I'm at a place right now where I don't have a whole lot of excitement looking at the horizon. I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I feel like there's a lot of entrenched things. I'm excited about my kids' lives and being able to be excited for different milestones that they are celebrating. And I've got 4 kids. This is our first year of being empty nesters, where our last one is in college. So 2 in college, 2 out of college. And they are my hope and my future. And so the way I look at, and I'm excited about them. I want to try to help continue to launch them and help them to be into who they need to be and want to be in ways that I wasn't offered growing up. And so I think I'm excited about that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Before we wrap this up, Stuart, is there anything we have not got to, we didn't address, that you're like, look, I gotta mention that before we wrap this up?
I just don't think that you've been honest so far, Jeremy.
Oh yeah.
You acted like we don't know each other, but I mean I think we did. We met about I was 15 years ago. We met in prison. Yeah.
Did we?
You're being modest here. You're being modest. We go a little further back.
Tell me about when we met.
It was, you were called, I think I remember you as you were J Slice is I think is what they called you on the cell block.
I haven't used that name in a long time.
It was. I'm surprised that the teardrops, you got those removed.
Very painful procedure.
It was. But it looks great. It looks
Thank
great.
you.
I like what you done.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is beautiful. No, telling people stuff they don't know yet. No, I think that if people want to follow any of my work or any of the stuff I'm doing, you can look up Snarky Faith. It connects you to my main website, but also I wrote a column on Patheos, a weekly column that's called Snarky Faith, and I also have a podcast that's called Snarky Faith. So those are easier things to I guess to spell than my name and first name and last name. So yeah.
So it's snarkyfaith.com, right?
Snarkyfaith.com, or you can just look up the word Snarky Faith, and it'll lead you to any of the avenues that your pastor doesn't want you to go down. So
see how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This podcast that I'm on right now, and mine as well. I feel like these are the slippery slopes.
Oh yes.
That we were warned about.
Yes.
And you were doing this is you're socially lubricating these slopes to make them slippery.
I've found wine helps. So
it does.
It does. Send you right on your way.
It was.
Well, Stuart, it has been a delight to digitally get to know you. I enjoyed your book. I'm excited for more people to laugh at bad theology and hopefully arrive at something more beautiful that actually makes us more like Jesus. And I think your book is a great tool for that. So, dear listeners, grab a copy. Go check out Snarky Faith. And Stuart, thank you for sitting down with us and spending time today.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you. I loved any reason to day drink. And you're my favorite day drinking partner from now on. So, yeah.
There we go. We'll take that. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode of Cabernet and Pray.